And while I was there, I decided to get a checkup. And so this led to me being diagnosed with stage 4 follicular lymphoma, a type of blood cancer. I was told things like the junk food, such as going to fast food and things like that, actually will help starve the cancer because it has no nutrients to feed it. Just crazy stuff like that. At the time, I made jokes about they're trying to kill us with the food so they don't have to treat us. Where I am now, the Queensland government has been killing off farmers' cattle without their permission. They just go out to the field and find all these dead cattle. They've been shooting them from a helicopter.
All right. Hey, good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. We've got, I believe, David with us to share his success story. David, how are you doing this morning?
I'm very good, Dr. Baker. Thank you very much for having me, Ashley. Very nice to meet you.
Yeah. Okay. Where are you from? I hear a little accent.
I'm in Australia.
You're in Australia. Are you there currently right now?
Yeah, Queensland. Yeah, I'm permanently here at the moment.
Okay. So, gosh, it's a weird time. What time is it there? It's 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, something like that?
Yeah, 2 a.m. now. Yeah.
Goodness, thanks for getting up or staying up or getting up early, whatever you're doing for this. For other folks, we have done these later in the afternoon, so it'd be a little more reasonable time for you.
That's okay.
That's okay. Let's just get started then. Tell us a little bit about your background and how did you get into this, I guess, carnivore diet?
Okay, I fell into the carnivore diet. At first, and this goes back a while actually, background-wise, this all started back in 2011, actually a little bit before. I was living in Japan and with my wife, she's Japanese, and we were hit by the 3/11 event, the earthquake and tsunami. We were living in the region called Miyagi. And this all started, obviously we had this big earthquake and tsunami, and we spent the next 9 months trying to survive and then rebuild everything. And this led to me ended up going back to Australia to visit my family at Christmas time in 2012, just to let them know that I was okay, sort of thing, and doing fine. And while I was there, I decided to get a checkup. And so this led to me being diagnosed with stage 4 follicular lymphoma, a type of blood cancer. And then subsequently, I ended up having to stay in Australia to treat it. And I went through all the R-CHOP and the radiation and all these different various chemotherapies and whatnot. And this lasted about 8 months, really. And then 2 years later, I was back to stage 4 blood cancer. So this led me to all sorts of problems, obviously, more treatment and a stem cell transplant. And then after that was years of just living blood test to blood test and either waiting to die or trying to find some other way of treating it or managing it. Eventually, I ended up spending years in bed. After the transplant, I couldn't move. I felt somewhat detached from my body, like neurologically. I couldn't really get my legs to move and things like that. Obviously, a bit of an emotional roller coaster over the years as well. It didn't help. But I found myself craving meat, Like I found that I was getting up in the middle of the night. I would cook a kilo of meat, just as big a steak I could find in the freezer, and I'd just devour it, and my body would just soak it up. So I found that, and it took me a while to get onto this. I found that when I went back to a more caveman sort of style diet, I was just starting to heal and start to feel a lot better about everything, actually, and just started to get a lot more movement back in my body. And it wasn't, I suppose you would call it more of a ketogenic sort of style diet, and I managed it. And I have managed it over the last 9 years, now in remission. And I found you guys. I found you actually, and all these followers talking about just straight meat diet, a carnivore style diet, and I'm thinking, are these guys lunatics? All right, are they serious? All right, there's got to be, and you have to have carbohydrates. This is part of. I'm 50 years old now, and my whole life has been the standard. I suppose you call it the standard American diet, but I think it's more like the standard world diet at the moment. You have to have your grains, and you have to have your carbohydrates, your fruits and vegetables, and all this sort of thing. And even over the last 9 years, I did include my fruits and vegetables, and I did feel better. But I've been on carnivore now for about 130 days, and even the difference between them has been remarkable, actually. My last blood count, my platelets jumped 10 points just in the 3 months in the first 3 months of being on carnivore compared to a ketogenic style diet. Another great thing I've noticed is my immune system. I would pick up, especially after the transplant, my immune system was just flatlined for many years. And I pretty much was just living in a bubble. And my little studio apartment had to be wiped down regularly, sheets changed, everything like that daily. And since then, it's been a real struggle just to get my immune system functioning enough that I could fight off infections like colds and flus. But in the last 6 months, I've noticed that, I don't know if, I'm sure you would have picked up on this, but if I felt a little flat or if I felt a sore throat coming on, if I increase my fats, it has actually stopped the colds and flus dead in its track. And I think this has come down to the fact that we absorb our vitamins and minerals in through our lymph fluid and getting our lymphatic system moving. I think it's been the last 12 years basically. It's been a long road, but I always keep trying to find these things to try and help my immune system over the years. And I've been adding things like herbs, spices, fruits, vegetables, all those sort of things. But I think what I should have been doing is eliminating these things. I should have been eliminating things out of my diet.
It's hard to say in that situation. You don't know. This is one of those things where you're given an advanced stage malignancy diagnosis, and you try what everything's going to work for you. What you mentioned, your platelet count went up a little bit. Just for people that aren't familiar with lymphoma, what do you track? What are they looking at typically? Obviously looking at lymphocytes and some of the other cells in the white blood cells. But how do you know if things are going well or bad for you, typically laboratory wise?
I still see my oncologist every 6 months. I haven't had a local GP for the last 4 years because of a lot of global reasons at the moment. But so I have a blood test. The main thing we've been looking at is my platelet count, because that's remained low. My creatine levels also, I have only one kidney because the original tumor, the largest tumor that I had, was actually sitting on both of my kidneys, and one of them was crushed by the tumor. The most important things for me at the moment have been my platelet counts. Everything else dietary-wise has been pretty good. And my creatine levels are elevated because these are done on BMI. So for my size, because I'm only pretty short, but I'm pretty heavy for my weight, my size. I'm 196 pounds now. So in the last, 4 blood tests, my platelets were in the 130s, went up to 139 was the highest. And 3 months after starting carnivore, my platelets jumped up to 148. So a healthy range is anywhere between 150 and 650. I just think I'm also waiting on results of another blood test that I had last week. Yeah. Apart from that's pretty much all we're looking for.
For treatment, are you chronically on medications for this at all? So you're basically on no medications at this point.
I'm on zero medications. Yeah. I was on, before I started Carnivore, I had brought my medications down to one. I had just one for reflux. I had severe IBS and reflux for many years especially after all the chemotherapy. I managed to get my IBS managed or under control with fermented vegetables like sauerkraut, but the reflux is always there. And I did treat it with apple cider vinegar and things like that every now and then. But since starting Carnivore, I haven't needed either one of them, actually. It's just everything's gone. I'm on zero medications now. And yeah, it's an amazing feeling, actually. Yeah.
It's always awesome to get off meds and feel better. There's no doubt about it. And it's interesting because in the fermented vegetables, a lot of people will make the argument that fermenting the vegetables actually, because they're already fermented, our body doesn't ferment as much, and it decreases the bloating and some of the stuff that comes with when we have fermentation going on in our lower intestines. And a lot of people tolerate them better for various reasons. And it's interesting because you still had the reflux, and so maybe there was still a little bit of fermenting going on even within the fermented vegetables. I think you can't ferment them completely. There's still substance to them. So as far as, obviously, your primary interest is making sure this cancer stays away and stays in remission and recovering your health. And whenever we have a blood cancer, we're worried about immune system function. What other, you tried, because this has been many years you've been dealing with this. So what are some of the other things that you had tried? Obviously, there's the chemotherapy from the medical side, but are there things you were trying nutritionally or lifestyle-wise that either did or did not work for you?
Yeah, like you said, the building my immune system was one of the biggest struggles, actually, especially after the chemotherapy. A lot of the battle was actually caused by the chemotherapy as well. So it did eventually. The first treatment did actually target the cancer more. I was on R-CHOP the first time, and in the second time I was diagnosed, I was on what was called bendamustine. And this gave me a lot of health problems. It didn't actually do anything to the cancer, which led to the stem cell transplant. And the transplant was particularly heavy, and a few things went wrong, and they had trouble actually keeping me stable while I was going through this. So there's a lot of problems actually caused by the treatment itself. So for quite a while afterwards, it was just, I was lost for quite a while as well. And I just didn't really care what happened either way. And it took me a while to start feeling like, and I think the only reason I stayed positive eventually, my positivity came out, was because of the meat that I was eating. And I started to feel more motion and getting better. But I had tried, obviously at the time, I didn't believe just meat was going to do much for me, of course. But I tried to add things. I added cinnamon. I started adding cinnamon to pretty much everything I ate. I added all sorts of herbs and spices, as much as I could find, actually. Nutmeg and all sorts of things. I did have, when I couldn't move, I had a bit of success, a bit of a jump when I started deep breathing exercises, because I couldn't really get off the bed. And I had trouble breathing. And so I started doing these deep breathing exercises. I was watching Wim Hof, and this really helped me a lot. Obviously, I think now, because I was actually getting my lymphatic system moving again, and cold showers and that sort of thing. But I tried everything I could find that was cheap and I had access to, actually. But I would eliminate a few things every now and then, and I found that I was eating so many different herbs and spices that I thought they were doing me good, and I thought that they were helping. But all along the way, I was eating as much meat as I could get as well. So I think that was where the improvement was actually coming from. None of it really had any long-term effect on my immune system, though. I found that I would get infections quite easily still, even on all these herbs and spices. I was, you know, a cold or a flu would last me months, literally months. And it was very difficult at the time to get anything to treat it here in Australia, anything that was effective. And there was a few times where the flu actually put me back into hospital. And so it was, then I had to really try and reconsider what I was doing with my diet. And I eventually just said, just hang it and just go back to the way, just went back to, when I was younger, I always went back to like a lean protein, sort of low carb diet to try and lose a few pounds every now and then, get leaner. And I was always going to the gym, doing lots of sports when I was younger. So I just went back to doing that. But I found that that still didn't improve my platelet count. It didn't improve my immune system. It just managed it. And I think I was also adding a high protein to it. Protein powders, supplements, vitamins and minerals, things. I had a long list of vitamins I was taking at the time as well. Vitamin C, zinc, D. I mean, these are all good for you usually, but it just didn't really do much for me, actually. Not long-term immune system-wise anyway.
Yeah. What, as far as, if we talked about nutrition and diet and supplements, what other things were you trying to do? Were you sleeping okay? You said you spent a lot of time in bed, kind of bed bound. How were you able to break free of that? Was there exercise? Was there any other things that helped?
Yeah. I was stuck in bed for years, actually. Exercise obviously helps a lot. And at the time, I couldn't really connect with my legs or I just couldn't with my limbs, actually. I felt disconnected neurologically, and it took me a long time to actually learn how to move again. As I said, I actually started with deep breathing exercises, and that really helped a lot. I think the biggest benefit I got was, like I said, it took me a couple of years, but I was eventually increasing the amount of meat that I was eating. And I think it's just the ratio between the meat and everything else that I was eating carbs, of course. I was eating rice and I was eating oats and things like that, but very small portions. So I think this really aided me a lot. If I'd known, of course, back then about the carnivore diet, I think everything would have progressed a lot quicker. But c'est la vie, yeah. And I eventually got there, so I'm feeling pretty good now. The exercise-wise, I first started when I could start moving again. I just did standing exercises just to get before I could. There was a time where I couldn't actually stand up very long, maybe a couple of minutes at a time. And I had a walking aid. So I just tried to do as much as I could and walk a few steps more each time. And eventually it just built up from there. Eventually got into walking, and I think it took a good 4.5 years before my wife got me back into the gym. But it's just slowly progressed from one step at a time to walking and to just doing light things at home as well. So I think that really helped. Sure.
Yeah. The time you were going through all the chemotherapy and the other treatment for the lymphoma, was nutrition ever discussed at all? Was that part of the treatment plan, or?
Yeah, actually, that was, looking back, that was one of the hardest things to take, actually, was the fact that the dietary advice was Yeah, par would be, yeah, a nice way to put it. I was told things like the junk food, such as say going to fast food and things like that, actually will help starve the cancer because it has no nutrients to feed it. Just crazy stuff like that.
That came from who? Who was telling you to just eat junk food?
Nurses. And yeah, I took that with a grain of salt, honestly. Yeah, I just didn't see the hell that was possible. But I knew junk food obviously didn't have much nutrients in it, but I don't think that would help my health-wise. There are, of course, they recommended the standard sort of Australian diet was just eat lean and low fat, low calorie sort of diet. And it just didn't work. And even while I was in hospital, the hospital food is never good. But yeah, they kept feeding me sugar. It was always, here, have some candy, chocolates and chips and soft drinks, sugar drinks, and even sugar milks and things like that. So it was not something I could handle very well. And at the time, I actually refused to eat a lot of it. I'd get my wife to make food at home and bring it in for me. And we couldn't even get a decent drink of water. So they give you these little cups of water and that's about it. And the rest of the time they'd try and give me soda drinks and things like that. So I think they were trying to, at the time I made jokes about they're trying to kill us with the food so they don't have to treat us. But I might have been close to the mark, I think. So,
I know with some people undergoing chemo, they worry about people losing too much weight because there's this sort of concept of cancer cachexia. And so they will just eat anything type of thing. But yeah, you're right. I cannot see where just, hey, just eat a bunch of candy and junk food is going to do anything but be harmful to you. That's surprising you got that advice. Maybe not. I don't know. Nothing seems to surprise me that much anymore. So spending a year or two in bed, basically, you obviously can't work that way. What have you been able to do? Are you back to working now, or what are you doing now that you've more or less regained your health?
Yeah, I'm working on it now. I'm editing a book that I've been writing for the last couple of years at the moment. So I'm hoping to release that very soon. And I've just started a channel on YouTube and a few other things. So I'm trying to start things up again right now. And hopefully we can get back on track and we can, maybe we can move back. I can maybe leave Australia again and go back to Japan or maybe something else. So it's still up and everything's just starting to get in motion right now.
What in the book? I'm guessing the book is about your experience, or is it unrelated to this?
Yeah, about my experience with the earthquake, surviving that, and going through all the years of chemotherapy and cancer, and managing it now.
Yeah, sure. Let me. Could you spend how long were you in Japan? Just out of curiosity.
Almost 10 years.
10 years. How did you find that as far as, I guess, food-wise? Japan is notorious for people that live a long time. They also they don't have a big obesity issue. They're one of the few countries that doesn't really seem to be, maybe it's changed a little bit, but I think traditionally they're very slim. And was there something, they just don't eat a lot of food generally. I think that's often what we see. What kind of, any comments on the Japanese nutrition?
Yeah, no, you're right. They do eat very small portions, but yeah, I get that question a lot. Actually, people tell me Japanese eat a lot of rice and all that sort of stuff, but it's crazy. They love meat. We used to go to a lot of great restaurants in Japan. They call it tabe whole day. It's all you can eat meat restaurants. It's just meat. They can't even wait for their fish to cook. They love it. I think it's a great place to live. Actually, it's very cheap, and obesity is not a problem. I think it's in the opposite respect. Part of the culture is always being very self-controlled and very slim when it comes to their health and diet. A lot of girls these days, I think they are a little bit too slim. They don't eat enough because they do try to keep as slim as possible. But I think that's changing as well. People are getting more fitness orientated as well. I did see a lot of people in their late 70s, 80s, and even 90s would go to the gym and exercise a lot in Japan. I think the activity level is also part of their health benefits. Like, it's just part of their culture to be active and to take responsibility for their health as well. So I think it's part of their culture, part of their diet. There is a little bit of obesity coming into Japan now because of the more Western sort of style coming in, or the takeaway foods and things like that. But it's very rare still. I don't know, maybe the 70s in Australia was the same. It was pretty rare to be that obese. And usually Japan, they have no problem with being honest about people's weight. They have no problem being very open about it. Yeah, a lot of people get fat shamed. I think that helps.
Yeah, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think they have even the businesses, the companies are penalized for having obese employees, and so they're financially penalized for that, and so they actually get on their employees to make sure they stay a certain size. And again, I've not been there, so I can't say for sure, but that's what I've just read about.
Yeah, they do actually. The companies everyone has a health check. Every company that you work for in Japan, they get you to do health checks every 3 months. And if you're not as healthy as you could be, they tend to penalize the person for not taking care of themselves, because the company usually pays for their healthcare. And of course, this makes expensive healthcare if you're obese or you're not looking after yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in the U.S., that is a significant expense for major employers. They're paying a lot of money, a lot of money in healthcare. And it's, like I said, you could avoid a lot of that with proper nutrition lifestyle for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
So now that you've been on a carnivore diet for a couple months now, since like what you said, 100 and how many days, 80 days or something like that?
Yeah, 130 days.
130 days, so four plus months. Are your physicians aware of this, or aware of what you're doing, or have they commented or anything like that?
Yeah, I only see my oncologist now every 6 months. But last time I saw him, he was so impressed that he was actually considering trying it himself. So I put him on to you and Dr. Chafee, and an interview with Professor Thomas Seyfried. He was a great guy, actually. I've been following some of his work as well. I don't think he really took it on board, but at least planted the idea. So next time I see him, I'll try and convince him a bit more, I think. Because I think this, especially after talking with Professor Seyfried, this just seems to be the right way to treat it, or at least manage it. And I think the benefits, I have just been noticing improvements on a week-by-week basis. And to come back from the severity, like the amount of damage that happens to a body after chemotherapy, it just feels, it's amazing how resilient the body can be. And if you have a look at how many people have been losing so much weight as well, I just think it's incredible. Body is so resilient to take so many years of punishment and to actually be able to heal on this diet it's been nothing short of miraculous.
Yeah, like I said, it's something that I've certainly seen so many times. It's pretty tremendous. Outside of, have you noticed anything else besides, obviously, your platelet count is coming up, you feel better? Are there any other benefits you've seen from going from, because you were on a fairly healthy diet prior to going carnivore, and you dropped some of the fermented vegetables and things like that. What has been the biggest differences you've noted, positive or negative, I should say?
I haven't noticed anything really you'd call negative. When you take in too much fat, you tend to spend the day on the toilet. But I love the fact that it's very immediate. It's very easy to manage the carnivore diet. I think it's far easier than anything else that I've done in the past. You notice the difference, you feel the difference when you have too much of anything immediately. So in that respect, I think it's been very easy to manage. Negative-wise, I really can't think of anything that's in a negative. I've got a very simple taste. I don't miss variation in my foods. And I think of it as, I don't think of it as a restrictive diet. I think of it as just eliminating the things that have been holding me back so that I can focus on what makes me healthy. The benefits have just been improving every day, I think. My mental clarity is getting better and better. And especially after my transplant, I was completely cooked and like inside out. My brain was mush. My organs were all cooked, and I was passing skin and bringing up skin, layers and layers of thick skin, because I was just radiated from inside out. And I was just, for many years, it was very difficult to even think straight, even focus for more than a couple of minutes at a time. To get back some of that mental clarity, and actually, I think more than I had beforehand, has been just an amazing feeling, actually. Not only mentally, but just emotionally. So I really can't think of anything that I would change about it, because I love how simple it is as well, because even on a ketogenic sort of style diet, you're eating more than 4 or 5 times a day. Now I eat, it'll fluctuate between 1 meal a day to 3 meals a day. It just gives you back so much more time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely spend 4 or 5 hours a day engaging in eating behavior, whether it's thinking about it, preparing it, cleaning, eating, shopping, all that stuff. It's definitely a time saver for sure. So any negatives have you noticed since you've switched over to carnivore?
Only in other people's attitudes. I haven't noticed any negative health-wise. Everything just keeps getting, like I said, it just keeps improving health-wise. So the only negative would be other people's attitudes towards it. But I think, again, it just comes down to, I think, everyone else's limiting beliefs, and it doesn't bother me. I'm not going to apologize for looking after my health.
Yeah, amen to that. What have been the criticisms that you've come in? Is it just in your personal life, or is it online type stuff, or where are the major criticisms?
Yeah, both. Yeah, you tell someone that you go and eat carnivore style diet, or you just eat meat or animal products, and they look at you funny and think, where do you get your fiber from? Where do you get your veggies, your vitamins, and that sort of stuff? But obviously, that's just their ignorance. And no one ever says anything when you're chowing down on a heap of junk food. You come home with a pizza and a bag of chips and a bottle of Coke, and no one says anything. You come home with nothing but steak, and they criticize you. Whatever.
Yeah, I think the fact that people don't realize the nutritional benefits of meat is in part a criticism of the meat industry itself. They fail to get that message out there in a way that they could have. I think that's a big failing that they have. I am trying. I'm trying to get the message out there. And
I think you'd be doing a fantastic job.
We're all working together, so hopefully we can change the overall landscape, because as you're probably aware, even I think in Australia, certainly New Zealand, Ireland, some of these other places talking about we need to dramatically cut back on our red meat consumption and kill a bunch of cows. And
they've been doing that here. Yeah. They've been doing that. They've been attacking farms. Yeah, the useful idiot minions have been attacking farms, and we've got a couple of C40 cities. They're trying to ban meat and all this sort of crazy junk, of course. And where I am now, the Queensland government has been killing off farmers' cattle without their permission. They just go out to the field and find all these dead cattle. They've been shooting them from a helicopter. Crazy stuff like that. They've been taking their land.
That's amazing. As far as the C40, so what is it? Probably Melbourne and Sydney, I'm guessing, would be probably the two.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Melbourne.
Yeah, Melbourne.
But they're all pretty much going the same way here. Yeah, at least you're lucky. In America, you have people or different states that are fighting it, but Australia is completely gone.
Yeah,
to the WEF.
It is sad to see that. I remember when I lived in New Zealand, and that was back way early 1990s, and I just remember, I thought the people, that whole region was very a rugged type of people that had a very good sense of adventure, and then you saw the events of the last couple of years where this kind of caved, and it was just like, what the hell happened to the fighting spirit of it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like I said, I think it is still very much. I don't think the future is set in any way, and I think we have a lot of ability to impact that. And I think we can, as consumers, so we can just sit there and say, "Look, you got what fuels them is money, and if they don't have the." I tell people, when you continue to buy this processed garbage and participate in the drug, all the medications and all the other stuff, you're just feeding that beast more and giving it more power. And so, if you can get away from it, that's really helpful.
Yeah.
What you said? I think you said you were married to maybe a Japanese wife. I can't remember if you told me that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Is she on board with the carnivore thing, or what does she think?
Yeah, she's on board with it, and she's not actually doing it herself. She does more traditional Japanese style of eating, which is mostly meat, but she does incorporate rice and noodles and that sort of stuff as well. The difference, I think, the biggest difference for her is just the quality of meat that you get here in Australia. That in our price range, it's very expensive here, and I always just get the cheapest cut I can find. So a lot of what I eat is just ground beef and eggs and a lot of butter. Whereas in Japan, the meat's a lot cheaper, and they like to have very thin slices, not quite as rich as like a thick steak sort of thing. So she's on board with me doing it, and she loves meat too, but more fatty. The fattier the meat, the better. She's okay with things like lamb. Yeah, but apart from that, she's pretty much. And actually, since I've been doing this, she has eaten more meat and has lost a bit of weight herself. So it's been very good, actually.
Yeah, I guess when you said it's very affordable in Japan, I was surprised here. I thought it would be more expensive, but is it like the average person can afford to buy? I'm sure they eat a lot of probably seafood, and I would guess pork. Is pork very popular in Japan? I know it is certainly in China.
Yeah,
and
pork very popular. Okinawa, she loves pork.
Yeah, so
even now,
I was going to ask, but probably beef is still not as I don't know. Is beef still very accessible there?
Yeah, very accessible, actually. Their own beef, things like Wagyu and things like that, depending on the quality, can be quite expensive, but you always have options in Japan. There are a lot more options. Like my wife, she loves pork, and even here she'll eat pork. Yeah, Japan, love pork, actually. And the further south you go, the more pork they eat. Okinawa and places like that, they'll eat the whole pig. They eat a lot of organ meat and things like that as well. I'm not big on organ meat myself. I just think I don't have a very strong sort of taste palate. I just very simple, a bit of salt and beef, and I'm set to go. They have a lot of organ dishes and things like that they eat, which I used to avoid actually, but I quite like their liver. They do a great job with some of their liver dishes. But I've never seen anyone in Japan actually shy away from any kind of meat. It's not like the myth about they survive on rice and whatnot. That's just utter BS.
I think whereas in the U.S. we primarily eat like wheat and corn. That's our staple. I think it's just the opposite there, that Japan has higher, and Asia in general probably has a higher rice consumption, but it doesn't mean they're gorging and eating tons of rice. It means that they include a little bit with the meals is what my understanding. Maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but they probably have a small amount with most meals or many meals. Is that fair to say? Yeah,
that's fair to say. They usually have just small bowls of different dishes. So they'll have vegetables and rice and their meats all separated. They are a heavily fishing tradition as well, all around Japan. So they do eat, like I said, they eat a lot of seafood, which I think helps keep them slim as well. But, it's still meat. It's really just supplemented with rice. They usually eat meat and then just supplement it with a bowl of rice and a bowl of vegetables.
Yeah. My understanding is I don't think there's not much of a vegan movement there in Japan, is there? It's pretty minimal, if at all, I think.
Yeah, very minimal. Yeah. I haven't been there for a number of years now. We'll actually be going back in October. So I'll be able to catch up with a lot of that sort of stuff while I'm there. But the vegan movement is very small. And I think it's only in recent years that it's even put a foot in the door, really. Because most Japanese just love to eat meat.
This is something that and again, I've never been there, so I can't comment realistically, or very intelligently. But my understanding is they're fairly insular, and that maybe they don't have like a lot of outsiders. It's hard to incorporate. And did you find that? Is building friendships there or anything like that?
No, they're very friendly people. They're very open to, especially being a foreigner. Actually, it makes you quite popular in Japan. Actually, they're very open to that sort of stuff. I think like I said before, the standard sort of American diet is starting to creep in, but as far as like obesity and that sort of stuff, it's still very rare, and they do fat shame in Japan, and a lot of, I think one of the other, because of this, also in Japan, it's very difficult to find clothes once you get to a certain size, which it helps. I think they don't keep pandering to the growing obesity sort of problem. They just tell you to lose weight. If you can't fit into our clothes, just lose weight.
That interesting strategy. Yeah. Here in the US, we're going to build bigger chairs, and we have size, I don't even know it, 6XL, 7XL. And here's your mobility scooter, by the way, so you don't even have to walk anymore. Yeah. It's interesting.
Right.
Interesting.
It's exactly the same in Australia.
Yeah, for sure.
Even when different brands come to Australia, before they even get here, these so-called plus size people will start complaining about the models aren't big enough, sort of thing, for their clothes, and even sportswear. Who wants to advertise their sportswear with these so-called plus size people? It doesn't really make your brand look very good, does it?
Yeah, some are doing it though, for sure. Some are doing it, and they're getting a lot of pushback from that. And I think rightly. Again, I think I'm not to put anybody who's obese in a negative light, but I think to accept it as normal is a problem, because it's not normal, and we just have to continue to try to help the people, help them out. But we are running out of time, unfortunately. So let me ask you, you said you had a little bit of social media stuff. Are you willing to share that, or is that something you have an interest in people checking out?
Yeah, sure. I've got a YouTube page that's called DC Learning to Live. And it's just talking about my story about how I'm managing my cancer with the carnivore diet, and things that I'm learning along the way, and talking, hopefully, like I said, like I'm not trying to fat shame people either. I've lost a lot of weight on this as well. Even when I was back at the gym and I was on the ketogenic sort of style, I still had a lot of visceral fat, and I've lost, let me see, about 40 pounds just in the last few months as well. It's been very good for me as well, weight loss wise. And I also have Facebook and Twitter and all that sort of stuff. It's just trying to show people how resilient that their body can be, and I'm just trying to show them not to give up, and trying to eat in a healthier way. I don't really care which way they choose to go. I'm just showing them how well I'm doing on carnivore. So I know people choose vegetarian and vegan and that sort of stuff, and that's fine if that's what they want to do. But all I can do is show them how well I'm doing, and hopefully that's helping people to realize that, yeah, maybe you think, one, our education is wrong, and two, maybe they can do it too, because I know we all can. I've come back from, I was so far gone. It was, and I had people all around me telling me it's impossible, they can't do it, and all this sort of stuff. But people think like that because they haven't seen it done. That doesn't mean that we can't.
Yeah, good point. And again, and somebody said, thanks for getting up in the middle of the night to do this. I wish you the best of luck. Pleasure. And maybe if you get back to Japan, if you enjoy that, I hope you get there. And thanks for doing this and appreciate it. To the rest of the folks, there's another one of these at 1 p.m. today, guys, with another success story. I'll just let this out. We have over 1,000 now in our success story live. We have over 1,000 documented interviews and other success stories now, which is a huge landmark. That's tremendous to see how many people have been helped by this. So that's great to see. It's incredible. And hopefully you guys can share that news. And thank you so much for being here. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a pleasure and an honor. Thank you very much for having me.
Okay. Thanks, guys. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.